The first framing principle for our new program is that it is so important for adult educators to look back at history in order to look forward in what it is they do with their adult learners. And there are key lessons from Irish history. The first is that there has always been a status divide between liberal and vocational forms of education in Ireland. And this widening of the dichotomy between liberal and vocational education is clear to see throughout history. And so we must reflect carefully on that. The second is that adult education and further education providers cannot solely cater for the already educated. Beyond simply progressing learners' further advancement or upskilling, FET needs to inclusively cater for others, and it does. This caring, inclusive and success for all tradition needs to be given higher symbolic status. A more in-depth critique of the education economy relation is needed. The education economy relation has been built into the work of FET throughout Irish history. And we must ask ourselves whether or not we need to, as adult educators and providers, redefine outside of marketized logic what choice and performativity and success and data, etc., look like. So one of the key framing principles for us in our new program was the need to look foundationally at our history. Where are we now in order to know where are we going forward? So I hope I'm doing okay on time. I think I am. And I want to talk a little bit about the framing principle too, which is for us, it's important to practice what we preach. You'll see some images here that you have in relation to different learning environments. On the right-hand side, you have community education setting. In the middle, you might have an apprenticeship workshop you're based on, and again, a workshop on the left-hand side. You may be dealing with horticulture, outdoor education. We're very conscious that the learning environment, the classroom, the place of learning looks very different in FET. And sometimes it's outdoor, sometimes it's very active, sometimes it's very dialogical, and we need to model, engage new learning environments and prepare future adult educators for their settings. And one of the things is for people to share their own worlds, and we don't know in advance who the learners are just yet, and so we may end up with many, and we're likely to end up with many diverse learning environments, including the online classroom. But that space is now very much part of our program. And every 4 weeks on Saturday, we will walk adult educators through how to design distance learning curricula and how to assess online. And we will include the online classroom as very much part of our pedagogical environment. So the play on words, the jeu de mots here, practice what we preach. The emphasis here, 25 credits out of 60 is on teaching placement. And it's really about bringing that teaching placement to the fore when we're speaking to and working with our adult educators by weekend. We have set up a new partnership with a horticultural practice program in University College Cork, and we will bring the adult educators outdoors as well. And it's appreciating that there is no model classroom to engage with, that we all have to share in each other's learning environments, and then through those conversations and through the modeling, indeed teachers will model their own practice and show what we call micro teaching sessions, show videos of their own practices in their own settings in the curriculum on Saturdays, so that people will get to see and appreciate the diverse context, the diverse learners, the diverse teaching and learning strategies at play in situ. And that's making it meaningful for the adult educators, we hope. The third framing principle behind our program is really to be faithful to andragogy, and that really means going back to first principles on what andragogy means. It looks at the theorists, the German philosopher Karl Gruss, for example, or Malcolm Knowles, Edward Lindemann, the meaning of adult education way back in the 20s. And of course, we are up to date with our evidence-based studies as well, constantly focusing on adult education being about real life situations, being about flexible learning environments and better structured and personalized curricula, emphasizing the role of experience and self-direction and relevance and so on. And we can only get that by going back to andragogical principles. So some of the key principles that inform our program, that give it its philosophical framing, is really the notion of self-directed learning, which we know is about actively engaging learners, setting their own learning goals, selecting their own resources and evaluating their progress. providing guidance and support, of course, because self-directed learning doesn't mean leaving them off on their own. As we know, it's about scaffolding, but allowing for significant learner voice and learner autonomy in that work. Another key concept is funds of knowledge. This is sort of Velez Imbedez Greenberg's work and Lewis C. Moll from the University of Arizona, where we recognize that adults already have life experiences and that these are valuable resources for learning. And they can be used to enrich the educational process. This is where they share their experience and facilitate discussions. They talk about their prior experiences and so on. So funds of knowledge is to say that the curriculum doesn't start in abstract. It is where the learners are at, and that's the third key concept here. This is where I suppose educators are considering the diverse backgrounds and objectives of adult learners and are flexible in adapting their own instructional strategies to meet these needs. We planned, for example, in induction period to really have a profile of all the adult educators that we are going to serve, their different sectors, their own backgrounds. And of course, the first part of our course is really about them sharing all that together so that we have an idea of who we are and who we are about to learn as we go along together. Okay. And then the problem posing learning, of course, this comes from the Freudian concept of problem posing, is really presenting our student teachers with real world problems and encouraging them to apply their knowledge and skills. It's about nurturing their motivation, their interests, and being conscious of their well-being and the fact that they may not be so well comfortable with university settings, for example, or having prior educational experiences that were less than positive. It's about developing Carl Dweck's notion of growth mindset. And while psychology will deal with a lot of these issues, just to say that this really has to permeate throughout the program. The final sort of one that we identified as important to andragogy is the notion of formative assessment, where not everything is assessed, and not everything is assessed through the traditional means, such as essay writing and so on. So we have an awful lot of very different forms of assessment online through discussion boards and fora, but also through debates, through performance assessment and one's own teaching, for example. And the idea that when we do assess someone's teaching, that the visits are formative first and foremost, and that people learn from their experiences when reported and when given a report in each visit before summative assessment can happen. So formative assessment is really about not giving too much away to traditional forms of assessment. And in fact, we've shared assessment so that it is 20, 20, 20, 20 credits each semester, making up the full 60 credits. So there's no overload as well throughout the course. That's something we thought of. The fourth framing principle is the idea that adult educators are connected to the world. Who they are is really important. This graphic here is from Mary Piper's wonderful poem, I Am From, which is her Writing to Change the World text in 2006. And in this, it really highlights the fact that we're really working with adult educators working on themselves in relationship with others, and indeed in relationship to the planet as well. And so where as far as possible, what we would like to foster is a real closeness to social action projects out there. In fact, one of our modules is called Adult Education for Social Change. The person delivering that module is the Lifelong Learning Festival coordinator for Cork, Mr. Dennis Barrett. He deals with real projects, real action in the community, working closely with non-governmental organizations, local and global, and showing really all the adult educators the kind of work that's happening out there that make a difference. It also, of course, makes reference to the Sustainable Development Goals, whether it be about sustainable trade, environmental protection, conflict and stability, gender equality, human rights, volunteering and action, and so on. And it identifies the fact that really, you know, the work that we're doing is impacting citizenry, and adult educators have that great potential to make a positive impact locally and globally. In fact, we will use the phrase local identity to show that local and global are to be fused together. And we draw on the work of Vanessa Andriotti and others to show that global citizenship education is going to be something that permeates our program, and very much so, and that adult education is a particular transformative quality that we hope to nurture. The final framing principle really is to note that when we're working with adult educators, we are saying that teacher education is a journey. It's a learning journey. First of all, it's an epistemic journey. We know more, we have more skills as a result of journeying. So it's about knowledge and skills. Sure, epistemic journey is really important. It's really important as well because each adult educator will be working in their own sectors. So whether it's beauticians or construction apprentices, or whether it's community educators, they all have their own standards which they need to achieve through knowledge and skills. That's an epistemic journey. The second journey as a learner is that it's an ontological journey. That's a fancy academic term for really it's about how do we become who we are. So it's not just about knowing more stuff and being able to do more stuff. It's also about knowing about oneself and one's others in the class. And it's about values as well. And so we hope really to try to generate discussion, and maybe we can begin now by generating discussion on what kinds of knowledge, what kinds of skills, what kinds of values and actions would we wish to nurture amongst the adult educator community.